All right, if you're a fan of the pod, the LCFP Laners College Football Pod, if you watch us here on YouTube, we appreciate you a ton. And you know I've said this phrase a few times. A lot of people have problems, we got solutions. A lot of people have complaints, we got ideas. We're going to keep the creative juices flowing. We're going to keep the creativity humming. We're just going to try to give it our best shot. I am no commissioner. I got no prior experience coaching or whatever in the college football world. But I've got ideas. I don't think I'm smarter than I am. These aren't fully thought out ideas, but I've got suggestions, and we're keeping it creative for the sport that we all love because college football is an incredible game. We love it. The tradition, the rivalries, the pageantry. College football is unmatched in those areas, and it is such a special, beautiful game that we are going to continue to enjoy in years to come. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to look different. It's going to be shaped differently. The way we experience it may be a little bit different, but I still believe it's going to be mostly the same in the way that we experience it as fans. The college football experience cannot be completely taken away from us. So that's the first thing I want to talk about today. In this video, when I talk about, hey, the future of college football, kind of these crazy things that have happened so far in the offseason and the end of this season. I know it's been a gap for a video or an episode. We got some stuff in the works. We got some exciting things coming down the wire. We got some nice episodes still to come. And there's a lot to talk about in the college football world. And that is where we are going to begin. Number one, there's always something to talk about in college football. And part of that is awesome because we are raving fans. We love the sport. We love our team. We love our program. We love our players, our coaches. And now more than ever, we have got to be attached to the news to see, are our players staying? Are our coaches staying? Who's going to the NFL? Who's leaving? Who's coming back for another year? Who's hitting the portal? How much are they getting? Where are their offers from? Where's their crystal ball? There is so much going on. And yes, it keeps our attention and it's fun and it's exciting. But let's talk about the downside of it. It's exhausting. And I believe that's why we're seeing a lot of college coaches bolt to the NFL. In the same era, the NIL era that's paved the way for college athletes to stay longer and to use that as leverage against NFL contracts and to weigh their options between declaring for the draft or staying in college football for another year. In that same era, it is also pushing coaches out of the sport. Now, you know, pretty much can't go an episode without bringing up the name Coach Saban, the GOAT, Nick Saban. And we haven't gotten to do a farewell episode for him yet. We're about a month behind on that, but we will. We'll get some Alabama fans on here. We will pay tribute and think back on some of the incredible moments that marked Saban's dynasty at Alabama and beyond. He had some great years in other places too. Won a national title in Baton Rouge at LSU. So Saban, the GOAT, unbelievable run. Many people are saying, if it weren't for this new era of college football, he might have had a few years left in the tank. That's not my opinion. That's not the thought that I have. And I mean, if you remember going back to 2020, right? The world shuts down. College football is crazy. SEC is one of the few conferences that says, hey, we're still having a full season. All SEC slate, crazy games all year. And Saban had to miss a game because of contact tracing or having COVID. I don't know what the craziness was at that time. It was madness. But basically, he was in his basement. They're interviewing him, and he's not at the field, and someone else is coaching the game, and it's 2020. And that's when it got really loud because being an Alabama fan, and if you're a diehard college football fan, you know, like for the last 5 years, every year it's been like, oh, is this it for Saban? Is this his last year? Like, how much does he have left in the tank? And the 2020 season, that team might have been his best team at Alabama. That team was dominant. Okay, Devontae Smith won the Heisman, absolute dog, one of the all-time greats at Alabama at a receiver position that's absolutely stacked. Talking about guys like Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, guys that position has just been stacked, and he stands out. He won the Heisman that year. And oh, not to mention they had some other dogs on that team as well with him playing. And after that year, people thought, is Saban done? Does he have anything left in the tank? Is he still going? Now, I am not here to say that I believe he stopped because of the NIL era and the transfer portal era. That is not my belief. However, a lot of people think that. And you have to think, at least give it a thought. You have to at least consider it. Did this play a part in Nick Saban, the GOAT, retiring, moving on, calling it quits? Because a lot of coaches are speaking up. A lot of people are speaking up. Kirk Herbstreit said, the sport is spiraling out of control. And Kirk Herbstreit is getting a lot of hate right now, specifically from the FSU fan base, but also a lot of other people who are just kind of sticking up for them or have an underdog mentality. Their team has never been involved in the CFP, or they feel their team got snubbed. And so they think that Kirk Herbstreit is to blame for FSU not being in the playoff. Now, I'm not even going to try to reason with you because that's just ridiculous. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. And last time I checked, Kirk Herbstreit isn't the only guy that didn't think FSU should be in there. And oh, by the way, we already talked about it, but FSU fans, come on. 63-3? 63-3. I don't care who played, who didn't play, whatever. That's not it. That's not it. Georgia beat you, and Georgia deserved to be in the playoff more than you. So, and yeah, I know that a couple weeks before Jordan Travis got hurt, a couple weeks before the ACC championship game, I was of the mindset and the belief and the opinion that Florida State deserved to be in the playoff. But things change. Injuries happen. Every week we get to reevaluate teams. We get to learn more about teams. And along with those lines, we got to think about the future and the 12-team playoff. I was listening to Josh Pate. Shout out. I've given him a lot of shout outs as the years gone on more and more. I think that this guy is ahead of the curve on a lot of things. He was one of the people like I was, and we're gonna go back a couple episodes when I talked about the future of the sport, and I talked about how the SEC and the Big Ten would probably team up and we would see a Super 2. And I talked about when I look at the future of college football, I see more of a future where there's a Power 2 than a Core 4 or a Power 4. With the Pac dissolving next year and this being the last year of the Pac and it going now to 4 Power 4 conferences, I don't really see it that way. I think the Big 12 and the ACC are a little bit in scramble mode. I don't think that they have enough of the big brands, enough of the huge, historic, massive stadiums, enough of the funding, enough of the history across their conference. The SEC and the Big 10 have just a few teams, if 5 teams, that don't have an insane history, that don't have a 80,000 plus capacity state. Like they have from top to bottom, pretty much, with the exception of a few teams, historic, raging fan bases that are crazy with a ton of funding, huge capacity stadiums, rabid fan bases, lots of history, great coaches from top to bottom in that conference. And so I believe that the gap between the Big Ten and the SEC and the rest of the country, Big 12 and ACC included, is way bigger than any other gap that we could see across college sports right now. And, it's a lot. It's a lot. The problem is, getting back to number one, this nonstop, yeah, it's fun. It's cool to keep up with news. There's always content for people's social media pages and YouTube and shows like I'm using right now for this YouTube episode. But the problem, the other edge of the sword, is that the NFL actually has an offseason. NFL coaches, they actually have lives. They actually get to spend time with their families. Think about college football. Think about the month of December. Compare it to your life. Now, I don't know what industry you're in. I don't know what field of work you're in. But I know this. November, end of November, Thanksgiving, rivalry week. You're probably traveling to see family. Month of December, end of the year, probably trying to be with family for Christmas or go on a vacation or do something. Like, we think of the holidays, we think of that time of year, think of family, think of friends, think of relaxation, think of vacation. Yeah, there might be some stress involved or surrounding those things, but at the end of the day, that's the time of year that we want to celebrate. We want to be with family, we want to be with friends. And that's the time of year that's busiest for a college football coach. So if you made the playoff or you made a New Year's Six or a late bowl game, late December, early January bowl game, You had to do game prep, several weeks of it, throughout the month of December. Oh, and by the way, early signing period coming up soon. So you're hitting the high school recruiting trails like crazy. Oh, okay, let's sprinkle in, that's not crazy enough for these college coaches. Let's sprinkle in the transfer portal as well. Transfer portal is open. Oh, and then if your coach leaves for another job, your transfer portal for your school specifically is going to open for another 30 days. What? What? In what world do we live in? Do we think that that is feasible? Do we think that that job is attractive? And do we think that the college football head coaching role or coaching role at all can compete with an NFL coaching role? And that's why you're seeing head coach, Boston College, taking a coordinator job in the NFL. Like, that's why you're seeing head coaches in college leave for not even head coaching jobs in the NFL. Like, Jim Harbaugh accomplished the job. Congrats to Jim, man. Went to Michigan with one mission, with one job. He wanted to bring a national title back to his alma mater, a place where he played, a place that he loves. Man, he runs deep there. His family runs deep, Michigan. He got the job done. For as much flack as I gave him, for as frustrated as I was that I believed that the last couple of years were shaped, some of the success was shaped by some cheating, at the end of the day, he got the job done for Michigan. He went there. He inherited a program that was not in a good place. He inherited a program that was getting beat by Ohio State every year. In the last few years, he flipped the script. In the last 2 years, I was one of the many voices who said, they can make the playoff. They've got a really easy schedule. They've found a way to do that, but they can't get over the hump. Well, I was wrong. They got over the hump. They won it all this year. They took down Alabama in Nick Saban's last game, beat them in overtime despite a lot of mistakes that they made. And then they clearly handled Washington. Thought they could have run away with it even more. Honestly, the way that they're running the football, don't know why they tried to stop running the football. I think that there might have been a little bit of, we got to prove that J.J. McCarthy's a really good quarterback sprinkled in there, but that's a conversation for another time. At the end of the day, they won it all. Jim Harbaugh accomplished his mission. He inherited a program that was consistently being beat by Ohio State, that was not near the top of the Big Ten. He brought them to the top of the Big Ten. He brought them to the mountaintop, got them a national championship, and he went to the NFL. And I don't think any Michigan fans are surprised, and I don't think any of them are, disappointed isn't the right word, because obviously you're disappointed. Your coach left that was probably one of your best coaches of all time, right? Obviously Bo Schembechler and a lot of greats through there, but talk about a guy that won you a national championship in this modern era, had a really good record the last 3 years. And they stuck with him too. There's got to be a point to that of like, that 2020 year was bad. I thought that might be it for Jim Harbaugh. I thought like ship has sunk and he's out. Didn't accomplish the mission, but he stuck through a tough 2020 year. A 2-4, whatever. Like, they were bad. He righted the ship. They got really good, and they dominated college football this year. So congrats to Jim. But again, I don't think anyone's surprised he went to the NFL. Do you want to keep living that life? Hey, your kids are around. They got sports going on. They got life going on. Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't be at Christmas. Can't be at Thanksgiving. I'm recruiting. I'm game prepping for these bowl games. Like, it's a nonstop job. And now the deck is kind of reshuffled. The transfer portal, guys are in new places. Coaches are moving to different places. And places are still trying to figure out their coaching staffs. They're still trying to fill in things. They're going to have spring practices. The portal's going to open again. They're going to have to fill position needs. Like, it's just nonstop. There is zero offseason for college football. And that's why, unless they can address that, unless they can change that, coaches are going to keep leaving for the NFL. Hey, better money and actually know my schedule. And actually know my job responsibility. If you're the college football coach, you're the CEO. You're doing everything. Like, you're the coach. You're doing everything. You're recruiting. If you're a head coach in the NFL, aside from a few special guys, the last few years, like a Pete Carroll, like a Bill Belichick, you're not the GM. You're not the owner of the team. Like, you have a bunch of staff and personnel that are there to do their jobs, to set you up for success, and you got to work with them and you got to do your job. But you're not the everything guy. As the head college football coach, you're the everything guy. And oh, by the way, the job opportunities in college football, there's a lot less opportunities to be successful than NFL jobs. And that's point number 2 for me today. I really think now the number's probably grown a little bit. I really think that, and this might be a generous number, there's like 5 to 10 schools that actually have a legitimate chance to win the national championship game every single year. And if you're outside of that top 5 to 10, you're going to a job that has higher expectations than they are probably capable of. So you're inheriting a job with a fan base and with bosses, an AD or a president or whatever, university that has expectations that are way too high. So let's talk about it, right? University of Florida. Man, ever since Urban Meyer left, it's been a revolving door. Massive expectations. You're coming off the Tebow era. You're coming off the Urban Meyer era. People expect you to win national championships. They expect you to compete for that. They want 10-win seasons every year. They want you competing for the SEC championship. They want you in the national title conversation. You better have top 10 recruiting classes. Like, the expectations there, think about it. How many guys are going to be able to actually pull that off at Florida? Well, now the door is open a little bit more, but you've had to face Nick Saban, the GOAT, the last few years. You've had Kirby Smart emerge and bring Georgia to the top of the food chain in college football. And that's just in your conference. Oh, by the way, not to mention, there's a bunch of other guys that are right around you, vying and jockeying for your position every single year just in your conference. Oh, not to mention in your state, Florida State, the Seminoles. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah, they're a national championship contending team. Like, dude, how easy of a job is that? That is brutal. And if you don't figure it out in like 2 or 3 years, you're gone. We're on to the next guy. I just think that the expectations across college football fan bases are way too unrealistic. And there's a lot more middle tier, mediocre teams than they would like to admit. Now, obviously, everybody wants greatness. And you can't just settle for a constant mediocrity. But I do think that if you have realistic expectations, you realize, hey man, there's only one national champion every single year. And dude, for the last 16 years, Nick Saban's been in that conversation. Ohio State has been in that conversation. For the last few years, Georgia has been in that conversation. There's only so many teams that actually have the recruiting, the fan base, the funding, the coaching staff, and the magic, right? You think about Auburn's last run. There was just some magic to it that had to happen. How many times is that formula going to actually work out for your team to actually make a run for a national championship? I think there's a lot of teams in that boat where the expectations are way too high and you're just running people in and out of town with unrealistic expectations, the same results, and you're starting over too quick because you're not giving guys a chance. Maybe we learn from Michigan. I know Jim Harbaugh is a unique talent, so he got to have the benefit of the doubt. He got to have the bad year in the middle of his tenure. He had an incredible run at San Francisco. He had an incredible run at Stanford. Everywhere he's been, San Diego, he has been a great coach. He earned that. But I think there's some other coaches out there that we might be better suited, fan bases, to give them the benefit of the doubt, to believe that, hey, maybe the best is yet to come. So that's the big challenge right now in college football. How can you overcome those things? And I think that there's a couple ideas, there's a couple solutions. I'm not the expert, and I know that the biggest challenge, number 3, the biggest challenge is the transfer portal. And the transfer portal window is obviously set up to fit between the fall and spring semesters. And I get that from an academic standpoint. I get that from transcripts and trying to transfer classes and credits. But are we really going to keep playing by those rules? Are we really going to keep acting like this is a student athlete thing? Dartmouth just made the ruling of hey, these college athletes, they're employees of the university. So I don't know if there's some legislation that needs to change. I don't know exactly what the solution is, but I do think, why in the world are we sacrificing what should be the most important, the biggest time of the year for the sport? Bowl games, playoff, national championship. Why in the world, in the midst of this, when all eyes should be on the sport for the game itself, for the most exciting games of the year, for the biggest matchups with the best teams that have earned the right to be there all year, why in the world are we throwing the transfer portal right in the middle of that? And I know, I get it. I already addressed it. Academically, it makes sense. It's between the 2 semesters. That's when you transfer schools. But can we not find a way to make an exception to push that back until at least after the season has ended? I think about Malik Murphy, University of Texas, backup quarterback. Contributed, started multiple games this year, played in several games this year. His team is one of 4. Moving forward, it's going to be 12. So it's not going to be as special to make the playoff. It still will always be, but to make it with 4 teams. And he had to say, you know what? I'm going to decide to hit the portal. Because if I play in these playoff games, then I'm not going to be eligible until the next portal window. Like, what? We're really forcing guys to make those kind of decisions? I just don't think that that's the best thing for the sport. But man, talking about 4 versus 12 teams, it's going to be interesting. Shout out to Josh Pate. He said, hey, there might be a 3-loss national champion in the future. I don't disagree with him at all. I really don't. He also said that there's a lot less chance for the Cinderella story. 100% agree. I don't see anything wrong with that statement. A couple years ago, Cincinnati, non-Power 5 team, makes the playoff. Now they're in the Power 5 or Power 4, whatever you want to call it. I think we're moving towards the Power 2 era. Obviously, those meetings between the SEC and the Big Ten conferences and their commissioners, I think that's a good move. I really do. And I think that's the future. And I think that there's a way to implement other ACC and Big 12 and even non-ACC and Big 12 teams into those Super 2 conferences to make it kind of like the NFL, the NFC, and the AFC. I believe that's the future of the sport. And I think that it's a good thing because we're trying to act like there's a level playing field or like there's going to be these Cinderella stories when there's obviously nowhere near the funding. And any time that a non-Power 5 team really has a great season or has some continued success, either the coach is gone or the players are gone. Like if they make a run, if they have a good year, they're going, oh my, I can get a lot of money from NIL if I go to that school. Hey, if I jump ship now and I go to Texas, I'm going to get paid. And I'm going to have a chance to play for a national championship. And can we really blame these guys if that's the system that they're in for doing those kind of things? Can we really blame guys for trying to move up the ladder? And if they have a couple years of success at a G5 school or even lower than that for taking a higher job? Like that's the system that's set up right now. So we really can't be upset with them for doing those kind of things. So that's some of my offseason notes so far. We're going to have a lot more episodes coming up, a lot more things to talk about. But these are things to consider. And I really believe that the future is bright for college football. I think we're in a weird spot right now. I think there's going to be some laws, some legislation, some rule changes. And I look forward to that. Right now is a little bit of kind of, I would call it the chaos era of just like stuff is happening really fast. We're pushing for things really fast. And I even think that's why the death of the Pac-12 is a casualty of that. Like, hey, we got to get the money. We got to get the bids. We got to get in the bigger conference. Like it's happening fast. I think that needs to slow down a little. I think even the 12-team playoff got pushed through quick, and now we kind of have like a 5-7 or like a 4-8 type thing where it's like, hey, half-ish of the slots you can earn your way in and get an automatic bid, but then the rest of them we're still going to reserve the right to choose. I think you kind of go all in or all out. Like, hey, either all 12 slots, here's the path to make it, or hey, we're just going to reserve the right to determine the 12 best teams in the country. And yes, still 13 and 14 would obviously always still be upset. But if we do that, then we can really feel better about crowning the true national champion. I'm sure a team like Georgia would have loved a shot at one of those playoff teams this year. And I think with the 12 team, no matter what the format, they would have had a chance. And it may have been a different result. Now, Michigan fans, I know you're already on me, so I'm not saying it would have been. I'm just playing the what if card here. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Comment your thoughts. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your ideas. I want to talk through some of those things. That's just kind of the way I'm seeing the sport right now. I think some changes are on the horizon, but we're in a little bit of this chaos era. We're figuring it out as we go, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains. But I think a few years from now, we may be really excited about where the sport is at. As always, please subscribe. That helps us. Thank you so much for tuning in to Laners College Football Pod.